It's time for Reason.
5 states last night had their primaries, and the blue wave is not happening. The excitement, the activism, and right now the Republicans would have been able to maintain every single one of their seats in the 5 states, whether it was a House seat, whether it was a Senate seat, or whether it was the governorship or anything else locally that may have happened in those states. Republicans would have maintained every single one of them. Where's the blue wave, baby? Where is it? We're not seeing it.
This is the Voice of Reason with Andy Hoosier.
Then I'll get on my knees and pray. We don't get fooled again. Don't get fooled again.
That's what I'm talking about. Welcome into the Voice of Reason, broadcasting live out of the heart of the nation here in Wichita, Kansas on the Big Talker KQAM, simulcasting on KGPT TV and broadcasting across the entire Mid-America Network. What's happening? Good morning. Welcome into the Voice of Reason on a Tuesday. It is the day we look forward to every single week. It is the best day of the entire week. Welcome in. Let's carpe diem all over this place. 316-721-8255, 316-721-TALK. If you want to join in, we have the Facebook Live feed up and rolling as well. And some interesting news this morning as everybody's talking about it. A little giddiness, a little excitedness as the U.S. Supreme Court last night, or yesterday at least, shoots down the old law banning sports gambling in the country and allowing states to have decisions over this sports game. You know what? I tell you what, Kansas right now, first off, will be the center of attention on this discussion. Let me tell you that right now, because we are already in the works of trying to legalize it to some degree here in the state of Kansas. So we're moving in the right direction. Second off, it's about freaking time, really, that we have the liberty and we had the choice to do things like this, like gambling. Now, some people don't like to gamble, which is completely fine, and I totally understand. Some people don't agree with it in any way, shape, or form. That's fine, totally understand. At the same time, we should have the choice to do so. I personally see no reason why gambling should not be legal for sports. Makes no difference to me. I mean, we have different and we have such weird laws when it comes to gambling. I mean, if you go to Las Vegas, and obviously it's gambling, you can gamble pretty much however you want to, any way you want to. You can do sports gambling, and Vegas is really the only place so far that's been allowed to actually be able to do that. But the rest of the country, not allowed to sports gamble. You go there and you can gamble on different games. You can gamble on different movies. I mean, you can gamble on anything. You go to the casino. You can gamble. You really can't gamble outside of the casinos right now, which is a little absurd and ridiculous in my opinion. But that, if you just follow the money, that's a clear reason why right now you're not allowed to gamble anywhere else outside of the casinos, because they have control of it. They have the monopoly on it, and they control much of the money going into the legislature, to where the legislature's not going to vote on really anything much different, which is why it was a bit of a shock that we actually were able to get through something like the lottery tickets and the vending machines that actually just signed by the governor as of yesterday. So that was another piece of good news. But that's why we're not going to see any type of horse racing or dog racing in the state of Kansas right now, because of the sales tax rate that's like double or triple the rate as if you would go to a casino and actually gamble there. So because they have control over it. It's all about the money. It's all about the money. It's all about the control, because they like their monopoly on it, and they're making buttloads of money. It's expected. So it's going to be interesting to watch how Kansas, the state of Kansas, ends up making the decision when it comes to the sports gambling in the state. And I think that we're going to work on. We already have legislation that's kind of sort of halfway in the works already, that they were kind of waiting for this decision to kind of fall down on, and that way we can move forward with it. Kansas will be the center of attention on this discussion. Mark my words. Oklahoma will not do it. Many other states around us will not do it, but we are one of the very few right now that is deciding on what to do with sports gambling. Is it a good idea? And I'd love to hear your thoughts on this first thing in the morning. And I know everybody's been talking about it already, and a lot of them will be talking about it throughout the day today. But is it a good idea, between maybe how it may affect the actual sport itself? Do you think it's going to make the sports a little more corrupt by trying to pay off or buy off some of the teams or some of the athletes or some of the coaches or whatever it may be? Do you think it's going to be detrimental to the quality? Do you think that it's actually going to boost it a little bit? And do you agree with the state government or even the federal government receiving revenue from these types of decisions? 316-721-8255. There's a lot of different aspects to this topic that I think would be really interesting. As I said before, now I'm not a big gambler. I like to do it on occasion. I like to go to the casino and have a little fun once in a while. I've been to Vegas really once as an adult. Let me tell you something. First off, I went as a kid. My parents thought that we'd take a family vacation to Las Vegas. Not sure where we got that grand idea, because being a kid, you can't really do anything. You can't walk into the casinos unless you stay on the nice little walkway there where you don't actually go near the slot machines or anything of that sort. You can't go into many of the adult shows. You can't go into a lot of things. You can't do anything. And so I was a little upset with that family vacation, because I was right at the age where I wanted to do adult things, but yet I wasn't able to do adult things. And it very frustrated me, very much so. So I went to Vegas then once, and then my wife and I actually got married in Vegas a few years later, and we got to do some of those fun things and got to go and enjoy. So I've been to Vegas to actually gamble once, but it was fun. And I like to gamble once in a while, and I enjoy that, but I'm not a big gambler. But how this could affect the sporting industry could completely either help it or harm it to a major degree. And that's what I want to hear your thoughts on. 316-721-8255. Good, bad, or indifferent. We could see a lot of changes when it comes to the sporting world, depending on states. Now, again, the fact is, and this is the reason that I like this, it goes back to the states. The federal government should not have a decision on what to do with gambling in any way, shape, or form, in my opinion. I think it should be left up to the states to decide what the states want to do with their own gambling laws, whether it's going to be lottery tickets and vending machines all over the state and all over different markets and all over different stores or gas stations or whatever, which is what the governor signed as of yesterday, whether it's going to be completely banning any type of gambling, whether it's going to be legalizing sports gambling and gambling for anything. It should be up to the states and the people of the states that actually want to make that decision. So I want to hear from you. 316-721-8255. Let's go to the phones. Let's see. Line number one. Good morning. What's your name?
Morning, it's Deacon.
Deacon, what's happening, my friend?
Hey, it's a beautiful day out here.
Every day. It's a little bit cooler this morning.
Oh, it's fantastic. Cool it off a little bit. You don't feel like you're melting out here.
That's right. I bet you're enjoying that.
Oh, yeah. Hey, I got a two-parter for you.
Go for it.
The first one is, people have been gambling on sports since, the first time somebody figured out they could throw a ball.
Sure.
So, the only difference here is now people aren't going to have, you're not going to worry as much about, athletes being strong-armed by the mafia or some other organized crime influence to affect the outcome of a game. So, I think,
you're saying this is actually going to help it, because right now it's already going on. And some of like, for example, boxing. The reason I stopped watching boxing is because so many guys were throwing the fights and just falling down and not getting back up. And many of them were being bought off because of boxing or because of gambling that was illegal, that was internal, that no one knew about, that kind of corrupted the entire sport. If we legalize it, then we know that could potentially be something, but we'd be able to kind of bring it more out in the open and kind of weed out some of that backdoor dealings.
Right. When you take something out of the shadows, crime has a lot less hold on it.
That is true. That is true. Now, do you think, though, that we may see a lot of discussion about many players, let's say in like baseball, because, there's a difference between sports where it's just you and you alone, whether it's boxing or MMA or whether it's like tennis or something like that, or whether you're like with baseball or football to where you're working with a whole bunch of players and a whole bunch of people, and then you start seeing numerous different players admitting to either gambling on themselves or accepting some type of deal with people, maybe even more out in the open, and not so much necessarily just mafia types, but just regular Joe Schmo who has a lot of money and just wants to try and talk to him and try and lay down some money on him to do something good or bad.
Or you have an athlete who maybe has gotten into some financial problems and he figures he's going to lay down a bet,
sure,
and clean up. There's always the bad to go along with. I don't gamble. I don't care.
Sure.
That it doesn't affect me one way or the other. I just think that, like I said, when you shine light on something, the roaches tend to run away.
That is true. That is true. Now, here's the thing. To me, sports are entertainment. Anyways, I don't follow sports necessarily as closely as many other people do, because I just see it as the distraction and the entertainment value. So if you want the entertainment to kind of step away for a minute, that's a way to do it. To me, I see it that even if it does become a little more corrupt, because there are many players that may be taking gambling bets or maybe taking different deals behind the scenes to be able to throw games or do something, that it's still going to be the entertainment value. And instead of seeing being the sporadic, we're not sure what's going to happen with this game, but it's more staged like a WWE wrestling match. To me, as long as you get the entertainment value, I don't know if it necessarily even matters to a lot of people, right?
Well, there's that too. And that brings me to my second part. Are they going to let Pete Rose in the Hall of Fame now and lift his lifetime ban?
That's a good question. I mean, if they legalize this, then maybe they'll go back and say, yeah, you know what, maybe we shouldn't come down on him as hard like we have been for so many years.
The biggest athlete to ever be expelled from a sport because of sports gambling was Pete Rose. I mean, the man had a maneuver in baseball. The Pete Rose slide was named after him.
Sure.
And he is part of a lifetime ban. Won't let him into the Hall of Fame because he gambled on a sport. So, people are going to gamble. It doesn't matter what the law is. Just like people are going to use drugs. People are going to break the law. But, I keep going back to the cockroaches.
Sure.
Shine the light, the cockroaches, some of them are ballsy and they're going to be like, yeah, you know what, whatever. But, the majority of them are going to take off. And, then I think the brighter the light, the more people pay attention, the less likely you are for someone to abuse the system and, break the rules, because then their friends are looking at them. You're talking about people in team sports.
Sure.
Their teammates are looking at them going, hey, man, I will mess you up if you throw a game. I'm going to break your leg.
That's a great point, Deacon. I hate to cut you off, my friend. Got to take a break, but you make some really great points, and I think you're right. I think that could help clean it up a little bit. I think that it could. I don't know. I want to get your thoughts on this. 316-721-TALK. Is it good to legalize sports gambling at the state-by-state level, and what could we anticipate coming out of this? More on that when we come back.
Ag News from Mid-America Ag Network. I'm Craig Mead. Ag News brought to you by Kubota and your Kansas Kubota dealers. See them today.
Welcome back into the Voice of Reason, 24 minutes past the hour. Appreciate you hanging out with us today on a hashtag Patriotic Tuesday. Look, I'm in a unique position when it comes to this whole sports gambling thing because I don't care about the sport. I just like the fact that we actually have a little bit of freedom and the fact that we get to choose as a state what we're going to do. Now, of course, it really may make it interesting based on teams that are in other states and how championships are done in other states and that sort of thing. So it'll be really interesting to see. I look at it, though, from the liberty perspective of you get to choose, and I don't really care whether it actually helps or hurts the actual sporting events because it's just nothing more than entertainment value in itself. $4.87 billion, by the way, in 2017 was spent on gambling just in Las Vegas. $4.87 billion on sports gambling last year for 2017 in one city. Imagine what that would do for the entire country if state by state we begin legalizing more sports gambling. Let's go to Rick with the news.
Stay tuned. Stay tuned.
Good morning, sir.
Hey, good morning, Andy. Good morning, everyone. The latest report yesterday shows more than half of the winter wheat crop in the Sunflower State is struggling. National Ag Statistics Service reported that 18% of the wheat in Kansas in very poor condition, only 14% rated as good statewide, and 1% as excellent. Kansas farmers also busy planting. The report says 68% of the state's corn crop has been seeded, along with 31% of soybeans and 3% of sorghum. The president of Garden City's Community College facing growing pressure to resign over a range of sexual harassment issues at the school and a threat to its accreditation. Garden City Telegram reports last week that the college's faculty senate demanded that college president Herb Swender step down, citing what it says was too slow of a reaction to accusations that a cheer coach sexually harassed former cheerleaders and made racist remarks at them. Local residents echoed those sentiments to the school's Board of Trustees. And a federal judge here in Wichita has delayed the sentencing of 3 men who plotted to bomb a mosque and apartment complex housing Somali refugees in Garden City. U.S. District Judge Eric Malgren yesterday reset the sentencing date to September 6th at federal court in Wichita for Patrick Stein, Gavin Wright, and Curtis Allen. The case had been scheduled for sentencing next month, but defense attorneys asked for more time in part to prepare for it. Now, I got to tell you something about this story, okay? This an Associated Press story.
Yes.
Okay. And it goes on to talk about the case against Patrick Stein, Gavin Wright, and Curtis Allen. And the final sentence of this story says, they were indicted in an October 2016 indictment for an attack planned for the day after the presidential election in the western Kansas meatpacking town of Garden City. Come on, Associated Press. It's Garden City. That's the best you can come up with.
Garden City.
Is it's a meat packing town?
There it is. Yeah, well, yeah, it's the meat packing town. There you go. Nothing more, just the meat packing town.
I mean, I'm not like off on a tangent for the Finney County Economic Development Corporation or the Garden City Chamber, but it's a hell of a lot more than just a meat packing town.
Again, this is the flyover state, and this is the way they see it, is we're just the podunks, and they're the meat packing folks out there in Garden City.
Bunch of snowflakes at the AP is what it is.
There you go. I do have to enjoy the harassment.
Harassment.
It's harassment. It has been called harassment since the beginning of time, and nothing other than the change in the last 8 months did people start saying it's now harassment.
And how do you say wiffle ball, Andy?
It's a wiffle ball.
A wiffle ball.
It is a wiffle ball. Thank you very much,
dude.
There you
Have
go.
a good one.
Rick with the news.
And that's the news.
I always get a kick out of that. The harassment. So many people begin saying that now in the. I don't know why that started. I mean, well, come on. Have you ever heard of harassment? Anytime before the last 6 months? Give me a break. 316-721-8255, 316-721-TALK. Well, that's coming up on the show today. After the bottom of the hour, we did part number 2 of our legislative recap 2018 yesterday in studio with the state representative Brenda Landwehr and Leo Delperding and Blake Carpenter. All were in studio for the last hour of the show yesterday. We did get some of that audio, and we'll play that coming up here in just a few minutes after the bottom of the hour. In the 8 o'clock hour today, we do have one of the Republican candidates for the 2nd Congressional District, Mr. Steve Watkins. He'll be joining us, I believe, actually in studio for about a half hour or so, chatting about some of his ideas, policies, and what he's going to be doing if he ends up getting that nomination. So we'll talk with one of those candidates. It is open lines to you today. I do want to focus some time today on this sports gambling, your thoughts on that, and whether it's going to hurt or help the sports, and what kind of revenue we could see. Here's what we need to do. If we are going to legalize sports gambling in the state of Kansas, which the other states around us, as far as I'm aware, are not looking at doing this in any way, shape, or form. Right now, Nevada being currently the only state you're allowed to do so, and 5 states which are going to actually act on this before anybody else, New Jersey, Connecticut, Pennsylvania, West Virginia, and Mississippi, have already passed that legislation, according to ESPN. And there are other 14 states that are working on legislation that have already been introduced, one of them already being the state of Kansas, where we may see something change relatively quick. Quote, the legalization of sports gambling requires an important policy choice, but the choice is not ours to make. Congress can regulate sports gambling directly, but if it elects not to do so, each state is free to act on its own, according to the Supreme Court. So many states may be making that decision. Here's my take. If we are going to legalize it in the state of Kansas, let's start substituting that revenue that we'll see from that with maybe, income taxes or sales taxes or property taxes or any other tax that our state of Kansas likes to gouge us on because they feel it's their money as opposed to ours. So maybe we can start substituting it in for people who choose to want to pay the government with their gambling habits. How about that concept?
in the world of politics.
But if you're really angry, why in the first place are you not frustrated and angry to the fact that you have to spend $250 to $600 of your own cash to be able to provide resources in the classroom?
This is the Voice of Reason with Andy Hoosier.
Make it happen today on a Tuesday, #Patriotic Tuesday. What's up? What's happening? Good morning to you. Great to have you along today. 316-721-8255, 316-721-TALK. Let's go to the phones and take a phone call here real quick before we get to our interviews of the morning. Good morning. What's your name?
Eric, how are you doing today, Andy?
I am great, sir. How are you doing?
Pretty good. I just have one question for you.
Sure.
Your definition of liberty is something that is regulated by the state and taxed by the state? That doesn't sound like liberty to me.
Well, it's easier to have liberty and a bigger voice of the people when it's decided at the state level as opposed to the federal level.
Well, it's still not liberty.
Well, you're right. I mean, it would be even more so. It'd be even better if it were just open completely without the state even having their hands into it as well. But when we come to my point is coming from a constitutional point of having the states really be sovereign states to make choices for themselves, that the federal government shouldn't be involved in something like gambling and shouldn't make a decision like gambling. So it's good to hear the Supreme Court come out and say, yeah, you know what, that's not our place to have, and it's up to states to decide because of the sovereign states and the choices that they should be able to make on a state-by-state basis. That's the point I'm getting at. You're right. When it comes to any of this, yeah.
Okay. You're talking about statism. Yeah, I thoroughly agree with statism, but
yeah, no, absolutely.
Liberty.
No,
okay.
You're right.
All right, brother.
No, you're
Thanks,
absolutely
man.
right. I appreciate it, Eric, very much so. No, you're absolutely right. I mean, if we talk about true liberty and we want to go even further than that and realistic, I mean, it would be nice to say, you know what, the states aren't even going to regulate this, just do what you will and have at it, have fun. You're right. I mean, that's realistically never going to happen when it comes to gambling because there are many states that just have an iron grip on something like gambling, along with alcohol, along with drugs, along with any other issue that we talk about that many states or many governments deem either unnecessary or dangerous or whatever the case may be. So, but we do have a bit more liberty because we have more of a vocal voice within our government as a state level than we do trying to tell the federal government actually what to do. That was the point I was trying to get at. But point taken. You're absolutely right that, I mean, even the state, when they try to control something to say, no, you're not allowed to gamble. I mean, is that really liberty? Not necessarily as much. It's still better, though, than the federal government. That's the point I was trying to make. But great point. I appreciate that very much. 316-721-8255. I want to get to our interview. We sat down yesterday with 3 state representatives for the legislative recap, part number 2. Now, I do want to do a part number 3 on this legislative recap because there are still some issues that we have not addressed with the legislators coming out of this session and what to expect from next session, and I think it would be really important. So we may do a part number 3 probably next week, but yesterday we sat down with State Representatives Brenda Landwehr and Leo Delperdang and Blake Carpenter right here on The Voice of Reason, and this is what they had to say yesterday on the show. The biggest issue, the constitutional amendment protecting ourselves from being able to have more lawsuits of our own taxpayer money, going into lawsuits for more taxpayer money towards education, to limit the power of the Supreme Court, and to try and stop this nonstop ending litigation. We came in with that kind of the priority of many saying this is what we have to do this year because this will be the last year that we have to worry about this garbage. The leadership then coming out towards the end of the session and saying we're not going to address any type of educational finance until we address the constitutional amendment. Then literally like a day or two later, they turn around and say, well, we're going to address the education funding, then we'll address the constitutional amendment. And then the last week of the session, they just said, yeah, we're just not going to get to it this year. The question is, I guess, why? Brenda, what do you think first off?
Well, I think there was a lot of pieces that went into that, Andy, in that we had, first of all, on the equity, we have equity and we have adequacy. Those are the 2 pieces that the lawsuits are driven by. And a lot of people were concerned in Western Kansas that on the equity issue, which would still be allowed to go to court, that they were being told that districts like, Sedgwick County, Johnson County, different places would start, taking the money from them. Mm-hmm. And so the rural districts would lose. So they were having a really hard time maybe picking up some of those folks out there. The other was, we kind of ran out of time. I mean, we got put on a clock like I've never seen before. And I mean, it was a hard clock. There was
Sure.
no choice. You either had to do it or you didn't have to do it.
Sure. What potential tax increases could we see? As you mentioned, I mean, over the next 5 years, Blake, we could see, $3.5 billion in additional funding. I'm sure in our 2-year budget cycle, they could try and fight for more increases. Did we give, by the way, the $20 million to the judicial branch for their salary increases? Was that part of the budget from this year? Did we pass that?
Yeah, it wasn't $20 million. It was $7 million. 2.5% of that went to giving the judges pay increases, which I didn't support. I mean, they already make $120,000. If we were going to give pay increases to anybody, it needs to go to non-judicial staff. So basically, the people who have to, work 3 or 4 jobs just to make ends meet.
Sure.
These people aren't making any money, really hardly at all.
And the stories that the media was saying how we opened up food banks for these individuals.
Well,
right?
and exactly. Not only that, but the Chief Justice comes down to the House floor and lectures us that how we're not giving their staff members enough money, but yet they're telling us that we have to spend more on education. So it's like, okay, well, what do you want your priority to be here?
Right.
And so really, there was about 7.5 million. I would say about 6 million of that ended up going towards the non-judicial staff employees, and about 700,000, I think, went towards the judicial pay increases. It was something along those lines.
Okay. Did we move anywhere when it came to mental health in the state, and where are we at? Because I know that's been kind of been your baby for a while.
Well, I think we did. Last year we were able to put some money into our community mental health centers, which we really need because we shut down Topeka State Hospital, we shut down Winfield State Hospital, and we said we'd put the money in the community. Well, guess what? We're not putting the money in the community. And then we wonder why it is that we have our state mental hospitals that are where we can't not do any voluntary admissions.
Sure.
Period. You have to be issued by court to go to there.
Because they're overloaded.
Well, they're overloaded, and that gets into another big issue. But mental health is playing a big part in our lives. Johnson County has a pocket of a high suicide rate up there. They're trying to figure out what's going on. Wichita is starting to see that increase. And, in western Kansas, people think, western Kansas, it's happy. No. We're just seeing a big increase in that. So we tried putting more money into some of those back into the community. The biggest thing I think is going to be a game changer for K-12 is creating a mental health for our schools that will be 24/7, 365 days a year. Whereas right now, if you get services for mental health in the school, it's only while the school's open. So we've got a pilot program out there with 6 of our school districts across the state. Wichita will be one of them. Topeka and KCK are our big urban districts. And then we have 3 western Kansas, so that we can get a good flavor of what we're doing. But it brings together.
Now, when you mention mental health in school, what does that entail? Is it like a therapist in the school? Is it someone at the school to help this? I mean, what all does it entail? What's involved with it?
It's gonna provide counseling. Excuse me. Counseling for the students in the school, which they've been getting some, but the schools cannot supply what the kids need.
Sure.
And when the child leaves the school building, are they getting it at home when a crisis happens or occurs? Is there a need within the whole family unit maybe having some services in that? So this pilot program will provide for our community mental health centers to beef up the number of therapists and counselors that we need, because there's just not enough of them in the state. The governor tried to come in. He said, well, we'll give you 150, each year for the next 5 years. You can't find 150 counselors. So why take and spread our resources even thinner? This pilot program, the first group is our alpha group, we call them, which is our foster care kids. So they're definitely in that group. And then we have our beta kids, which are the severely emotionally disturbed kids. And I think it will relieve some pressure, both from staffing as well as a financial deal down the road for K-12, so that some of our special education money can get spent on other kids besides just some of these that really are high-need kids.
Mm-hmm. Is there a statute on how many students in the school compared to how many counselors that there need to be there? Because I remember our school, it was a smaller school, close to 400 students in the entire high school, and we only had 1 counselor for the entire school. Is there any type of statute where it's based on population of the students, how many counselors need to be at the school?
No, it's not.
Okay.
No. And you can't, you don't want to blanket. This program is not going to be a cookie cutter. The only thing that will be
Sure.
cookie cutter will be the forms that we're using.
Sure.
And the database. That's the thing that's very exciting too, is of creating a database out there so that we can actually track these children. Are they improving? Are there, less disruptions in the classroom? Is the attendance better? Are tardiness better? A whole lot of things, not just on the academic side. Sure. And I think it'll also be a relief for, some of our teachers out there, because I learned this year something that really shocked me was the stress level of kindergarten teachers. I'm like, wait a minute, kindergarten teachers should be the happiest. They're fun kids. It's
right.
Like, no, because they're coming in with high needs. We have a behavioral health issues. We have, a lot of single parents. We have, fatherless families. We have families where, the boyfriend's moved in and is probably not the most appropriate person to be around kids. And it creates a lot of problems. We have, 2 working families, and that's been going on for a lot of years, and it's having an impact. Also learned a lot about how video games have an impact and just computer screens in general with the mind of these young kids because they're still developing. Mm-hmm. And so there's a whole lot that goes into it. We're really excited about it. We're also nervous about it because it's taken a lot of work to try to figure out how to bring 5 agencies together.
Sure.
And make the money flow the way it's supposed to flow. But we're going to stay on top of it, and we've had a lot of positives from all of those agencies as well as most of the school districts. We've got one out there, and I think it has to do with a school board member kind of thinking that she should have been in on the decision making, and she wasn't.
Sure. Well, some people get upset about that sometimes. We got just about 2 minutes left. I do want to wrap up here a little bit, but Blake, I want to ask you, I know you followed a lot about the Second Amendment issues in the state. We started off with a state reciprocity bill, kind of got out of hand with some regulation and control and kind of turned into a not so good bill. At the end of the year, what's your thoughts on the Second Amendment? Did we advance? Did we at least stay strong? And what could we see next year?
Well, we didn't go backwards, but we didn't gain any ground on the Second Amendment this year.
Mm-hmm.
The reciprocity that you were talking about, basically in 2015, we had the ability we had reciprocity agreements with other states that have individual citizens in their state that have the ability to carry at 18, 19, and 20. And so we had agreements with those states so they could come and carry it inside Kansas, but our citizens have to carry at 21 or older. So what the attempt was to change that concealed carry age here in the state of Kansas to 18, 19, and 20 as well, and then also acknowledge these other reciprocity agreements. And unfortunately, it failed in the Senate because the some people in the Senate decided not to bring it up.
Sure.
But I think what you'll see coming back next year is various Second Amendment bills that we had throughout this biennium. The first one's the reciprocity item, like you were talking about. The second one is getting us over the line to where we can allow school staff members to be able to conceal carry to better protect our students, to make sure that they're not soft targets.
There it is, Blake Carpenter and Brenda Landwehr, Leo Delperdang, state representatives, came in studio yesterday for our legislative recap number 2, 2018. We'll do a third one coming up probably next week with some more legislators as we have a few more topics to touch on what happened with this session this year. Lots more to get to today. Your phone calls as well. This is The Voice of Reason. Stay here. Wrapping up hour number 1. Welcome back into The Voice of Reason. Great to have you along today. It is a Tuesday, #Patriotic Tuesday, the way we like to roll on the second day of the work week, making you a happy individual as we wake up this morning. Better than a cup of coffee, a shot of espresso, even an energy drink, as we advance conservatism on a daily basis. 316-721-8255. Lots to get to today. One of the issues, not only with the sports gambling that we talked about earlier in the hour, but also with the lottery tickets and vending machines. Now, if you remember, this was something passed by the legislature last year. The Governor Brownback had vetoed, saying that it only hurts the poor, depending on where you put them, gas stations, bus stops, so on and so forth, and them using their money to buy lottery tickets, which I understand the sentiment, but again, I'm one of those to where I like being able to choose on my choice of what I want to do. And you know what? If you want to contribute your money to the government and not necessarily win the lottery, I mean, how many people actually win the lottery, have the chance of winning the lottery, but you want to contribute your money to the government openly, then that's your choice. That's your choice. Is it going to bring in more revenue to the state government? Absolutely. Absolutely, they're going to get more revenue. What we need to do, and I really wish this could be the stipulation on this, is depending on however much money that the lottery ticket sales actually generate for the state, we turn around and we offset that by giving a tax break to the people. Because if you openly choose, look, there's a difference between openly choosing to donate your money to the government and then forcefully having it taken from you. There's a big difference there. And with us finally, with Governor Gov Colyer yesterday signing this one, Kansas has legalized the sale of state lottery tickets through vending machines, and they're expected to start popping up in stores and gas stations next year. Republican Governor Gov Colyer this week signed a bill that sought lottery officials to authorize vending machine sales. Most states already allow such vending machines, but now this could generate up to $100 million in additional state revenue. That is good news, and I'm really excited about that, because if we have $100 million coming in, imagine what we could do. We could do a 1% sales tax reduction on food, which, according to State Representative John Whitmer, said that we could be cutting close to $60 million from state revenue, a.k.a. like our money, but they see it as their revenue. So what if we did that? We actually generated this money. We get $100 million more into the state revenue, and then we ended up reducing sales tax on food. Because if we could do that, then we would be punishing people less by forcefully taking it from them, while we depend on people that are openly wanting to give their money. Could it hurt individuals? Sure, it could hurt individuals. Would they get addicted to gambling? Yeah, possibly. Is that my problem? Not necessarily. Andy, that's so heartless. Wait a second. Don't we have the personal choice, personal responsibility? Andy, people have problems. Well, guess what? People have problems with tobacco. People have problems with alcohol. People have problems with drugs. People have problems with food. They have food addicts. People have problems with whatever. With just about anything, you could have an addiction, because it's to you, your personal responsibility, and your right to be able to choose on what you want to do and to the extreme that you want to take it. I have an addiction to politics. Is that something bad? Probably. Because anything taken too far is a problem, is bad. So if you have lottery tickets at vending machines and you can buy them pretty much anywhere you want to, and you have more access to them, guess what? That's your choice to say, hey, you know what? I'm going to slide my couple bucks in there, and I'm going to use up my money in order to get that lottery ticket, where I'm probably not going to get anything from it, but it's fun anyways. And by the way, I get to contribute to the state government and their revenue. Is that a problem? To me, I don't see that. It's the stability of the government. Look, stability of the government and their revenue should be about as stable as people wanting to go out and buy a lottery ticket and choosing to do so and not to do so, and how frequently they actually want to do so. To me, the government should be scrounging for money. To me, we should be able to keep our money, and the government should be desperate to try and get whatever they can just to be able to pay for whatever project they want to. That should be, in my humble opinion, the stability of how a government should operate. That's not how it is right now, because they see it as they need to be stable, and if they don't have enough money, they'll find more money by you, and then the private economy will just be kind of unstable, and if it grows, then fine. If it doesn't grow, then fine, and we'll just kind of offset it that way. But I don't have a problem with this. And now as we talk about sports gambling, that adds to it as well. More choice. Eric made a really good point earlier. Wait a second, Andy, you're talking about liberty. It shouldn't be regulated at the state level. You're right. You're right. It is more free, and it's more. It's a better choice for us by being regulated at the state level than it is the federal level. Is it completely free? No. Is it ever going to be completely free? No. This is the best we can do right now. It's baby steps, and we're doing a really great step right now by the Supreme Court with their decision yesterday, and now with our decision not only to talk about legalization of sports gambling in Kansas, but also this new lottery tickets being sold in vending machines. We're moving in the right direction. It may be slow, it may be painstaking, but we're moving in the right direction. Lots more coming up. Hour number 2. Stay here.
It's time for Reason.
5 states last night had their primaries, and the blue wave is not happening. The excitement, the activism, and right now the Republicans would have been able to maintain every single one of their seats in the 5 states, whether it was a House seat, whether it was a Senate seat, or whether it was the governorship or anything else locally that may have happened in those states. Republicans would have maintained every single one of them. Where's the blue wave, baby? Where is it? We're not seeing it.
This is the Voice of Reason with Andy Hoosier.
Then I'll get on my knees and pray. We don't get fooled again. Don't get fooled again.
Oh, that's what I'm talking about. Welcome into the Voice of Reason, broadcasting live out of the heart of the nation here in Wichita, Kansas, on the Big Talker, 1480 on the AM side, 102.5 on the FM side, KQAM. What's happening? simulcasting on KGPT TV channel 2610. It's great to have you along today on a hashtag Patriotic Tuesday. 316-721-8255. 316-721-TALK. If you want to join into the program, 8 minutes past the hour. It's great to have you along today. We have a lot to get to coming up at the bottom of the hour. Brian Fry, City Council member, joining us as he always does every Tuesday at 7:30. In the 8 o'clock hour, one of the candidates for the 2nd Congressional District up on the north side of the state, Republican candidate Steve Watkins. I got to meet him up at the KSRA, Kansas State Rifle Association's annual meeting, chatted with him for a bit, and he'll be actually in town and swinging in studio here in about an hour from now. So looking forward to chatting with him. So lots to get to, but I want to hear from you today. Big news of the day, of course, everybody's talking about is the fact that the U.S. Supreme Court has come back and said that states are now allowed to choose what they want to do when it comes to their choice of state sports gambling. Sports gambling in state by state. The Supreme Court struck down Professional and Amateur Sports Protection Act, a law passed in 1992, banned state-authorized sports gambling with limited exceptions, one of them really being like, Las Vegas, and some of the issues that may come up with that. Right now, Nevada is currently the only state that does allow that to happen, and now it will be up to the states to act. There are 5 states that are already working on implementing this immediately that include New Jersey, Connecticut, Pennsylvania, West Virginia, and Mississippi, and another 14 states with legislation ready to go to try and legalize this and begin making it happen, one of them including the state of Kansas. This includes California, Kansas, Kentucky, Illinois, and South Carolina. And the question I have for you, and we got some good calls on this, some interesting points on this so far already. Gambling, sports gambling in the state of Kansas. Do you agree with it, disagree with it? Should we move forward with an opportunity like this? And first off, I love the fact that we're going back to state sovereignty. The federal government should not be making a decision on gambling. That is not their choice. That is not their decision to make, because it's a little absurd that we had that in the first place. It's good we're going back to the states. The states can make their choice. Now, you and I have a voice on this. What can it do to the sports? What can it do to the team sports, to the individual sports? What could it do to tax revenue? They're anticipating this could bring in some decent money. We just saw the legalization, by the way, with Governor Colyer signing in the Kansas lottery tickets being sold in vending machines as of yesterday. They're anticipating close to $100 million worth of revenue coming in for that. What I think needs to happen, my personal opinion, is that we encourage the vending machines with the lottery tickets as much as we possibly can. We legalize the sports gambling in the state of Kansas to as much of a wide array as we possibly can. And whatever revenue that we see come in because of the gambling, because of the lottery tickets, because of any of these issues, then at the end of the year, however much money we saw come in with that, then we offset that by doing a tax reimbursement to the people of Kansas after the end of the year. That's what I think we should do. Or we can guesstimate how much money is going to be coming in for this, and we start lowering maybe an individual income tax or a property tax or a sales tax. Let's start offsetting this. This isn't to increase revenues. This is for us to say there's a difference between you choosing to want to give your money to the state government by buying a lottery ticket, by gambling because you know it's going to be at a ridiculously high sales tax rate, and then offset people that are forced to pay that and give an incentive and a break to individuals that are forcefully having their money being taken away from them. Because it's not your money, government. I don't care what you say. It's not your money. What can it do to the sport? Frankly, I don't really care. I'm not a big sports guru anyways. I know many people are. But whether it actually creates more shenanigans within the sporting world, because many players that may not spend their money wisely and maybe in financial ruins, maybe starting to do backdoor deals to throw a game or to throw a sport or to do something bad or whatever the case may be, so that way the gamblers can get money off of them. Maybe it actually helps it because some of the dealings that go on behind the scenes now might be able to get cleaned up, as we heard in the last from a caller in the last hour before. Maybe it would help, maybe it would hurt. I don't know. Either way, it's still going to be entertaining sports, and that's all you really want sports for, right? Anyways, isn't it? Is the entertainment value. Whether it's the entertainment of the who knows who's going to win the game to, you know what, it's like a WWE stage thing and we already know the outcome of it anyways, but it's still the journey to get to the end of the sporting event anyways. I don't really care because I'm not a big sports guy. I see many sports as a distraction to what we need to be focusing on, which is, I don't know, how we can live freely. what our tax rates are, what kind of government corruption and control that they have over us, what type of regulations they're trying to implement over you and I. To me, that's kind of important. And if you want to step away for a distraction once in a while, that's great. I enjoy some sports. I've played sports my entire life. I really enjoy watching some sports. I don't enjoy watching other sports. I just don't really care. At the end of the day, it's nothing more than entertainment value. It just depends on what kind of entertainment you're actually going to get out of it. So the question I have for you is, would it be a good thing? Would it hurt or help the sporting industry? And what could we do to begin offsetting some of that tax revenue the state may see in the state of Kansas when we actually start legalizing this? Now, here's my prediction. Is that if we end up going down this road and we end up legalizing sports gambling, which it sounds like we may be, here's my prediction, is that they're going to have limitations on this, and you're only going to be able to gamble on sports within a casino. Right now, the casinos have control of just about any type of gambling in the state of Kansas. They have their complete iron grip control over just about all of our state legislators, and that is why we're not allowed to see any type of horse or dog racing in the state, because they don't like any of the gambling money going elsewhere than within the casino. That's why that's really the case. They have contracts being made to where many of them are being paid for by state legislators, that we are actually in cahoots with many of the casinos. And I'm glad we have casinos, don't get me wrong. But you're never going to see any gambling, at least for a long time, outside of the casinos in the state of Kansas. How we got ourselves in that situation? Well, that's another discussion to be had, because I think that we should be able to gamble really anywhere we want to, at any time that we want to, on anything that we want to, because I don't see a problem with it, and I think that we have the choice to do so if we choose to do so. And if you have a problem with gambling, then, don't gamble. Don't gamble. Just like if you have a problem with alcohol, don't drink. If you have problems with drugs, don't do drugs. It's that simple. And if you need help with that, then there are programs to help you with that. But that shouldn't punish other people because they want to do that for the enjoyment of, or for the entertainment value of, because you are not able to contain yourself. It's kind of like remember the rules that you used to have for your kids, to where one kid would do something bad, so therefore all of them got punished? And that's really where we're at with many of the pieces of legislation that we have in the country right now. One person does something really bad with a firearm, so therefore everybody gets punished for it with more gun regulations because the one person didn't follow the laws that we already have in place. That's really where we're at right now. When it comes to these types of things, one person has a gambling issue, and I can't stop gambling. I gotta gamble, gotta throw my money into it, and then I'm broke, and then I have financial issues, and then you gotta take care of me. So what do? Let's isolate where we're allowed to gamble, and let's cap it off on who's allowed to gamble and what we're allowed to do with our gambling. And oh, by the way, it's only going to be done at the casinos, to where they get to benefit from all the financial benefits of that. And then, of course, the state government. Would this help the sport? And is this a direction that we should go as a state? I'd love to hear from your thoughts on this. 316-721-8255, 316-721-TALK. Let's go to the phones, line number 1. Good morning. What's your name?
Good morning, Andy. It's Ron.
Ron, how are you, sir?
I'm doing great.
Good.
To me, if they authorize the gambling on sports, what they need to do is, once the percentage that goes to the gambling casinos, and then the administration of it by the state, all of that money needs to go to a special fund that's set up. The money does not go into the general fund of the state, and all that money is dedicated to education, and give it to them.
That would be interesting. Now, and I like the concept. Here's the problem with it, is that they always, whenever they try and find a new tax revenue, they always find a specific pot that it's going to go into, a specific department that it's going to go towards to fund or expand or improve or whatever the case is. And it works for about a half a year, and then they run short on funds elsewhere. And then, just like we see currently with when we saw our financial issues in the state, is we end up borrowing from it because we don't have money in other departments or agencies that we need it in, and then we end up borrowing from there, and then it just really goes into a general fund because we just borrow from whatever department that we actually need to. And I mean, I know you're in support of this as well, but I have a really hard time giving the education system more money when they already consume so much already as is. What I think needs to happen is that I don't really care, let it go to the general fund, but I think however much money that we see coming in from both the lottery tickets through the vending machines that could increase revenues by close to $100 million that we just signed yesterday, along with this, if we end up legalizing sports gambling, is that whether we do it at the end of the year and we see the total revenue coming in from gambling and lottery tickets, or whether we do a projection on what we anticipate to come in from these things, then we offset that by lowering taxes elsewhere, whether it's property tax, increased tax, sales tax, whatever the case is, because if people are willing to give their money to the government through these programs, then we can start lowering the limit of how much we forcefully take from people. And I think we should offset it that way.
Well, good luck with that, but they're going to come back to want more and more, just like Root said.
Oh, sure.
He said, hey, we'll continue no matter what you give us. But to me, you ought to set it that says of the gross revenue, schools, you get a percentage and this is all you get.
Well, that would be good, and I would definitely agree with that. And you're absolutely right. I mean, if we tried to put that stipulation on when it comes to capping taxes elsewhere and lowering it to offset, then it's never going to happen because they want the revenue and they never have enough revenue. But it would be really nice to try and fight for something like that. Now, what I think would be ironic and what would probably end up happening is that they're going to set up a program and say whatever money comes in from gambling, we're going to use a percentage of it probably for education, but then another percentage of it to create different agencies and different ways to help fight gambling addiction. And it's probably how that's going to end up working, because that seems to be the trend. We legalize something that we're not sure whether it's a good thing or not, and then with that revenue from that, then we end up creating programs to help people from the addiction of that program that we just legalized.
Yeah, I'm like you. If drugs is a problem, don't do it. If gambling is a problem, don't do it.
Right. It's that simple. I mean, don't make us be punished because you can't control yourself on these types of things. But if we're concerned about people getting addicted to gambling, then we should probably make it illegal for cigarettes and for alcohol and for any type of drug and for possibly food too, because people can get addicted to food or fast cars or whatever they want to. We really see issues with just about anything. Why should the rest of us suffer because of that?
Hell no. The tough thing is going to be they're going to have to, if you get something on a ballot like that, the legislators are going to have to do a 2/3 to allow us to put something on the ballot.
Sure.
For gambling, and I don't even know whether you'll be able to see that.
Well, that's a good point. Right now, we're up in the air with our legislature and what they would actually do. Ron, I appreciate it very much, so bring up some great points. Still, I'm curious to see what it would do to the actual sports itself, whether you gamble on some with a team within your own state, whether you're allowed to gamble on any state or any sport or any team in the country, even though you're only living in one state. And maybe that state, let's say you gamble on Nebraska's football team and Nebraska doesn't allow gambling. Are you still allowed to gamble on them? Would it only be for you to be able to gamble on Wichita State, KU, and K-State? How some of this would actually turn out. It'd be really interesting to see what type of legislation actually comes out on this. Your thoughts and calls on that, I want to hear from you. 316-721-8255. Let's take a break. 21 minutes past the hour. Lots to get to today. This is The Voice of Reason. Stay here.
This is The Voice of Reason with Andy Hoosier.
Hey, welcome back into The Voice of Reason, 316-721-8255, 316-721-TALK. By the way, shifting gears just a little bit, we will still touch on the gambling if you want to touch on that a little bit later, but I've been holding on to this for about a week, and I've been laughing at it the more and more I look at it. If you remember the lawsuit that's kind of been wrapped up now with Chris Kobach, Secretary of State, along with the ACLU coming after him for some of the voting restrictions in the state, which, by the way, was one of the stupidest, most absurd legal cases that I've ever seen. There's been others as well, but this is one of them. If you remember, the ACLU came after him for the voting laws as opposed to him going after them or something like that. They've come after him numerous times trying to stop some of the voting laws in the state, saying that it's abusive, it's discriminatory, it's racist, it's this and that and the other, and it's absurd, which isn't the case, but they've tried that. And now, after the case is done, they're seeking Kobach to actually pay for all the fines and all the money that went into the lawsuit, which is close to $51,000. And if you remember, there was a potential piece of legislation in the state legislature trying to make him pay for it out of his personal pocket as opposed to the department, the Secretary of State agency that he actually runs because, well, it was on the job sort of thing. So he can pay for it out of the agency, but they were going to try and make him pay for it out of pocket. But it's close to $51,000, and now the ACLU seeking for him to pay for all of the court costs, along with him being in contempt. The American Civil Liberties Union asking for more than $50,000 in compensation for hours spent fighting Secretary of State Chris Kobach over the issues that led to his contempt court finding. Let me ask you something. When you get beat up in the playground because the big bully, he likes to beat you up, do you thank him for doing so afterwards? When they come after you and they find you and they target you and come after you and they're sitting there hitting you with your own arm saying, stop hitting yourself, and they beat you up at the end of it, do you say, oh, thank you for doing that, I feel much better now? Do you really do that? Really, honestly, truly? Yeah. Really, they're going to make him pay for them pursuing him because that's their mentality. Here's what I have to say for you. Yeah, pretty much. What? I can't hear you. Oh, I'm sorry. One more time, please. Yeah, that's kind of what I'm talking about. Sorry, no, we're not going to pay your fees because you felt like going after him for an absurd reason, and he's not going to pay you and saying, thank you for coming after me. I feel much better now. Sure, I'll pay your court costs. Absolutely ridiculous and absurd. It is that time. I want to play this again.
I'm going to drive, and I'm going to go fast, and I'm going to turn to the left sometime.
Call now at 721-8255 and get registered with KQAM.
There it is. It's time for you to get registered. It is our ticket giveaway for the Indianapolis 500. It's coming up on Memorial Weekend, Sunday, May 27th, and we have 2 tickets for you to go to the Indianapolis 500, brought to you by Auto Tech of Wichita, 4411 West Central Avenue. Visit them online, autotechwichita.com. Also, Six Gourmet Meats, 300 South Baltimore Street in Derby. You can visit them online on Facebook at Six Gourmet Butcher Shop. They are brought to you and presenting us the nice Indianapolis 500 tickets. We have 2 tickets for you. We'll get you registered today. If you do it, call right now. Caller number 1-316-721-8255. We'll get 5 people registered, 1 each day from now until Friday. We'll announce it next Monday on who the winner is and give you plenty of time to make your arrangements to get out to Indianapolis Speedway in Indiana. It's going to be a lot of fun. It's going to be a heck of a trip. You need to go and experience the greatest spectacle in racing, and we're going to give you an opportunity to do so. Caller number 1 right now at 316-721-8255. We'll get you registered for your chance to get 2 tickets to the Indianapolis 500 right here with Autotech, Six Gourmet Meats, and the Big Talker KQAM. Bottom of the hour news coming up when we come back. Brian Fry, City Council member, going to be joining us. Lots to get to today. This is The Voice of Reason.
Defending the rights of every Kansan.
I'm not being aggressive, I'm being dominant.
This is The Voice of Reason with Andy Hoosier.
Hey, welcome into The Voice of Reason, making it happen today on a hashtag Patriotic Tuesday. I love it. Welcome in. Having more fun than what any other talk radio show is all about. 316-721-8255, 316-721-TALK. Lots to get to. I still love it. The bullying from the courts and from the ACLU going against Kobach, I find it quite entertaining myself. I know that many people are still upset about him. You know what? Hey, if you don't like it, change the rules yourself. Don't just complain about it and try and fight it just because you have the opportunity to do so. It is that time. It's our city update with City Council member Mr. Brian Fry. We do it every single Tuesday at 7:30. Brian, how are you, my friend?
I'm great this morning. Boy, it's beautiful outside.
It is so nice. We had the storm. I got woken up, about midnight-ish, I want to say, last night with some booming and thundering outside. And that was entertaining. It was nice. It makes me sleep good for whatever reason. I just enjoy that.
Good sleeping weather.
Yeah, I get to enjoy, get to sleep nice. But we need the moisture nonetheless, too.
Absolutely.
I know the wheat harvest has been struggling a little bit. And I don't know what our have you heard any levels on our water table and our water levels lately? Are we okay?
No, we're dry. I mean, we're very dry. We're almost like Albuquerque dry.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I mean, it's getting very bad. I mean, Cheney's still up where we need it to be,
sure.
But certainly a week's worth of rain will definitely help.
That would definitely be nice, for sure. You guys have a lot of stuff happening at the citywide level right now. Before we get into some of what's going on with the meeting today, any big news that's happened over the last meeting?
What,
last couple of meetings?
Last week? I mean, there's so much that happens each week.
Right?
It's hard to remember. I'd have to go back and look at my notes. Last week was kind of a quiet week, but this week we got so much on our agenda that it's just got to keep looking forward.
We're moving forward big time. This is an issue that was huge last year, and I remember when we did the elections for the city council that this was like the number one priority that people called in to ask about. That was the pools.
Swimming pools,
the
yeah.
swimming pools.
Yeah.
Everybody all ready to go about the swimming pools, and now that we're getting into the warm weather and summertime, the swimming pools beginning to open up along with the transition from some of those to splash pads. And what's the latest with this whole discussion?
So if you remember, swimming pools have been in a bad shape for a very long time.
Sure.
We've had some pools that we had to close because they were losing so much water.
Mm-hmm.
One pool was losing a foot of water a night.
Wow. I think that was the Edgemore, close
Edgemore
to me.
pool, right.
Yeah,
so
great.
Some of our pools were built in the 50s and 60s. They're just really bad, and we really, I mean, they're held together by duct tape. I mean, just all the kinds of
Redneck's
issues.
heaven, my friend.
And so we went in and said, okay, we're going to do some master planning and figure out best way to do this, best practices. And the trend has also been allowing more splash pads,
sure.
Water playgrounds, because they can be open more hours of the day, more days of the year. They don't require lifeguards, so a lot less maintenance involved. So we took a lot of time. We didn't go through this, willy-nilly. We took the time. We went to the public. We asked them over and over, what do you want? What do you want to do? Finally settled on keeping 4 pools, one being a new one for the Northeast area to replace McAdams.
Okay.
And then those pools would get renovated, and then we would build new splash pads where some of the old pools were coming out.
Sure.
And then we'd add 2 more. So at the end of the day, the city would have 4 swimming pools, basically one in each section of the city, almost, and then 13 water playgrounds. And so what we're doing today is hiring the designer to do all of that at one time. Really save a lot of money that way. We can get more consistent operating systems throughout all of the pool operations and so forth.
Sure.
So that makes a lot of sense. Having one designer, that way we can get all the projects done, and we can establish themes for each pool to make them more attractable. Yeah, that's the right word. Sorry, too early. And so that way they're more appealing,
sure,
for people, more pleasing, and that way they're all done. And because then we have in our CIP, our capital improvement plan, we've got the money to do all these projects over the next 5 years.
Okay.
And so that way we don't have to go back and reopen the project and find a new designer. We can do it and save a lot of money this way, make it a little simpler in design.
Yeah, just get it all done at one time.
So the idea is we hire the designer this year, they do all the designs, all the plans, and then we can start construction next year.
Sure. Very good.
That's a big project. We've been working on that for the entire time I was on the park board. I thought I dealt with aquatics and master planning. So to finally see some progress there and get some of these splash pads, which are really, really more popular these days.
We are seeing a lot of more popularity come out of those. And as you mentioned before, they're a lot cheaper as well for the city to maintain, to not only put in and actually construct, but actually to maintain on a regular basis as well.
Right, and you don't have the lifeguard expense, which is a big expense with swimming pool operation. So.
Sure. How many across the city are there when it comes to, or are we looking at, once the renovations are done, currently what we have now compared to what we may have when it comes to pools and splash pads? I mean, how many are we looking at across the city of Wichita?
With the existing water playgrounds that we have, plus the new that we're going to construct, at the end of the day, we'll have about 13 water splash pads, and that's downtown, all sections of the city. So it'll be a really nice amenity, relief for people during the summer heat.
Sure. I'm assuming the one near Edgemore, I mean, that's I live right down near that one, so I know that's been brought up a couple of times, especially in the first district there. But do you have an idea? I'm assuming that one's turning into a splash pad because of the fact it was losing close to a foot a night.
Right. So Edgemore Pool closed 5 years ago.
Sure.
And right now the McAdams pool, that one is slated to close. It did close last year.
Sure.
Where it gets replaced, does it go back to McAdams? Does it go to Edgemore? Does it go to some place that we haven't thought of yet in the Northeast area? The idea now is that Edgemore would get a splash pad to replace that pool.
Okay.
But if the community decides that it's a better place for a pool, then maybe that splash pad gets put in Dr. Dye Park. And so McAdams is supposed to get a splash pad. Edgemore's supposed to get a splash pad. Where that pool goes, we still have to decide. And
Okay.
District 1 is going through that right now and talking about it and trying to figure out what best suits their needs. So
it's going to be really fun to see once this is all done. Now, this is going to be spread out over the next few years. I mean, I don't see all of the splash pads, all the pools getting renovated in 1 year and being done and over. What kind of time frame are we looking at on all this?
So I think we have 2 pools getting renovated in the same year, and that's 2021. But I think the whole contract, everything would be done by 2023.
Okay.
All the pools, all the splash
So we got
pads.
a good 4 or 5 years.
Yeah, and again, hopefully we'll run into no problems. We can all get it
Fingers
done on
crossed.
time, right?
That's right. Fingers crossed, on time and within budget. That's always ideal. Very good. Well, it's going to be an ongoing discussion. I know a lot of people are very, as we mentioned, very passionate about their swimming pools because whether it was what they were used to, being able to take their kids to be able to teach them how to swim, whether it's the splash pads just getting cooled off or during the summertime, it's great to actually get out and see some activity and to have a little fun as well.
Yep. So that's one project today. Another one is so Wichita's had a growth of popularity with microbreweries.
Which I had no idea. And I have to admit, I'm a beer lover. I've never really gotten into the whole microbrew thing, but it's fascinated me.
I love a microbrew, a local craft beer.
Yeah,
it's fabulous. And so between restaurants and microbreweries, we have about 10 of them in the city right now.
Wow.
But it's not allowable under ordinance to bring in minors.
Okay.
So for those folks, those places that are strictly drinking establishments, just a microbrewery with no food at all.
No food.
You cannot bring in a person under the age of 18.
Okay.
And so there's been a request that we allow that. And so for those places that are strictly microbreweries, the proposal is to allow under 18 as long as there's a parent or legal guardian, and they have to be out by 10 p.m.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
So there's about 5 places that this would affect. And a couple of them are really nice. Like one of them, Central Standard Brewery. It's in the Old Town, just east of Old Town, near a park. And it's got a great outdoor patio. And so, it's a very neighborhood feel. And so people come over there and they want to bring their kids. There's a food truck parked outside. So that's kind of the idea. It's like, look, if they're with their parents, if they're with their guardian, as long as they're out there by
by
a decent
10 o'clock.
hour, should this be allowed? And so that's one of the things we're going to discuss today as well, allowing that ordinance. Again, you didn't realize that we had this many.
I had no idea that we had that many microbrews, but let alone that microbrews that didn't even serve food. I mean, coming from Colorado, I know Colorado kind of really started the microbrew thing, and that was everywhere. You couldn't find a Coors Light because all you found was microbrews, and it kind of drove me nuts at times. But everyone that I saw the microbrews, even there, it was a restaurant, and then you could see the big everything, the distillery. They kind of did those as well. So I didn't even know that we had microbrews that didn't serve food. That's kind of a neat thing.
It's actually growing very much in popularity across the country with cities. These microbreweries are popping up all over the place. We've got 5 now, and there's some of my favorite places in town.
Oh, cool.
So it's good to see that. That's local flavor, right? That makes it something for your community that's special, that just great popularity. So
absolutely. So that's going to be voted on today.
We're going to discuss. Hopefully
it.
Get to a vote. I don't know, but it depends on what kind of feel the rest of the council has.
What type of discussion have you heard pro and con for this? Have you heard any different arguments on this?
I haven't heard too much con yet. It's just kind of popped up recently, this request, so we haven't had a lot of discussion. Hasn't been a lot of feedback either way. Certainly it's choice, right? You don't have to go into those establishments if you don't want to, but trying to put some limits on it of, trying to keep it, because it is a drinking establishment, and is that the right place for a child? Well, that's that parent's decision.
Well, exactly.
Right? If they want them there. I don't know. I think 10 o'clock is probably reasonable. I would think so. I wouldn't have an issue with it going a little earlier, but I think at this point,
as a kid, I think I'd be a little annoyed of like, okay, what am I going to do here to sit around and
Exactly.
watch? I can't even eat some food.
yeah, there's no
thanks a lot.
fries, right? That's all my kids ever want when we go out to eat is let's get some fries.
Right. But again, it's that choice of whether the parents want to take them there or not. So that's an interesting vote. I'm glad we're having that discussion.
And again, I think that's also that public scrutiny. I mean, if you're there and you bring your kids and everyone else is looking at you, and then you start to feel uncomfortable, maybe this isn't the place to do this.
Yeah.
And so it's going to really hinge upon each establishment and what they're comfortable with and what they allow. But
sure. Very good. Very good. I'm glad we're having that discussion. That's a fun one, I think. That'll be a good one today.
Yeah, but no beer sampling today. It'd be
see,
nice if they brought us samples.
There you go.
But
Bring the sample and say, like, let the kids in. Here's some taste for you. Yeah, there you go.
No,
Good.
I'm talking about for the council.
Oh, well, for the council, exactly. There you go. Yeah, got to do the sampling to make sure it's good enough to want more people to come in, even with the families. Exactly. Talk about what else. What else you guys got going as well when it comes to even the water in the city?
So we were talking about water earlier. Our current water treatment plant was built in the 40s. Think about that. That's over 80 years, almost 80 years old, right?
Yeah, a little bit.
It's been there a long time, and it's the one that we use for all of the made one downtown by Botanica, right?
Mhm.
That's the main water treatment plant. And then back in the 50s, we added what they call a concrete aerator rack, and that is what it's a system of valves and structures, and it removes all the volatiles, right, that try to pass through.
Sure.
Right, the bad stuff, so that then they can clean the water. You get all those little things that people flush down their toilet and in their sink that they're not supposed to.
Sure.
Those aerators grab those and clean them out. Well, those get jammed, they get inoperable. And then, about 20 years ago, zebra mussels were introduced at Cheney Reservoir. Well, that's where we get all of our water from, right?
Okay.
And so zebra mussels, if you're familiar with them, are very bad.
What is a zebra mussel?
It's a mollusk that has got very sharp edges, and they grab a hold of things and adhere, and they just take over equipment, right?
Interesting.
They just mass,
Sure.
right? And they got razor sharp edges, and they can clog up things, right?
Interesting.
And so they're very bad for boats. They're very bad for water systems. They're very bad for aerators.
Okay.
Right? So they jam them up, and so then they don't produce.
Sure.
Can't clean the water because zebra mussels and other volatiles have jammed up the system. So we've got to go in and fix those.
Okay.
Because if we don't fix them, that will really stop our ability to provide clean water.
Kind of important.
Exactly.
Kind of important.
So this is about a $2 million fix that we've got to, it's on our budget.
Okay.
And we plan for these things, but as the bigger question about our water treatment facilities and the fact that they're, 80 years old in some cases, and they're not the most efficient. And so we've got a longer term project of what we do with our water treatment plant. Is it in the right place? Is it the right size? Do we have the proper redundancy backup? So that's another bigger picture that we're dealing with. But right now, if we don't fix this issue, and yes, I know it sounds like how you're going to put $2 million into a project that you might end up building a new plant. Well,
Sure.
it's going to take some time to build that new plant.
Okay.
So we got to do this right now to make sure that we have clean water, operable systems, so everybody can drink
While we're
cook,
building a
bathe.
new one.
Exactly. So, we didn't have to deal with zebra mussels before. Now they're pretty much gone out of Cheney Lake, but if you've ever been a boater and you know that it's very easy for them to get brought back and introduced, and so we got to continue to fix these valves and these aerators. And yeah, it's not fun spending that money on things, but
that's
you
kind of
do
a
it.
necessity.
It's absolutely a necessity.
Yeah, it's kind of a necessity for something like that. So we are talking about the $2 million to do the repairs on what we currently have, and then whatever it's. I mean, if we did a whole new renovation on an entire water treatment system like that, what would that cost? Do you know?
A couple of $100 million easily.
Really? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So it'd be a little bit.
Especially if you build a brand new one.
Sure.
Versus trying to maintain and rebuild the one downtown.
Gotcha.
And then you always want to have that backup too, that redundancy. So, but again, it would be the most efficient, the most up to date, the versus
something not built in the 1940s.
Exactly.
Something not built in the 1940s.
Exactly. So
good. Well, that's an extremely important discussion to have. So that one being discussed today at the city council meeting as well.
Yeah, that one's an easier decision because if we don't do it, it's like, well, what are we going to do?
Right.
We're not going to have water.
Right.
So that's just pretty much, it's one of those things I just want people to be aware of, that these infrastructure projects are something that we deal with every day. In a city our size and a city our age, you've got to continue to make those investments. Yes, swimming pools are great, right? And having allowing your child to come into restaurants with you, or not restaurants, but a microbrew, that's great. But the core business of a city is making sure that infrastructure is operating properly, that your tax dollars are being used in the most efficient way, whether it's road construction, replacement of bridges, water treatment. Those are the big things that keep me obsessed.
Oh, absolutely. Well, I'm glad you guys are talking about it, and it's going to be, it sounds like one heck of a city council meeting today.
Yeah.
So.
Another good thing is Bombardier, with some expansion that they've got going. We've got to improve some ramps and some infrastructure there, taxiway, so that they can continue to bring work to Wichita for their global jets.
Sure.
So, I mean, that's another great sign that Bombardier is doing well. So just a lot of fun stuff today, a lot of great progress, but, we just got to stay after it.
Got to stay after it. I'm really excited to hear. Now, the microbrews, you mentioned 18. Do you mean 21 to be able to go into the microbrews? Is that the current?
Did I say 18?
Yeah.
Yeah, I meant 21.
Okay, 21. I want to be sure.
But, no, 21 to drink.
21 to drink.
But anyone under the age of 18
right now can't go in at all. But 18 can actually go in. They just can't drink.
Right.
Oh, really?
Right,
okay.
Yeah, but anyone under the age of 18 will have to be accompanied by a parent or guardian.
By guardian. Okay, perfect. If people want to show up to the city council meeting today, how can they do so?
9 a.m. Central and Main. City Hall.
City Hall. It's going to be a great time. City Council Member Brian Fry. We always love the discussion, my friend.
Absolutely. Thank you, Andy.
Great stuff. Looking forward to it. I can't wait to hear about what's going to happen with that microbrew. And I know where I'm going to go check out now, because I had no idea we had so many here in town.
We should go. I'll take you to a couple of the best ones.
Done. Let's make it happen.
All right.
I love it. 7 minutes at the top of the hour. This is The Voice of Reason. Stay here.
You're listening to The Voice of Reason with Andy Hoosier.
Welcome back into The Voice of Reason, wrapping up hour number 2. It goes by way too fast. Thanks again to City Council Member Mr. Brian Fry for joining the show. Always great stuff happening with the city of Wichita. I'm really interested to see what happens with some of those microbrews here, and I know where I'm going here relatively soon. Wrapping up this hour. When we come back in hour number 3, we have a lot to get to. Not only the discussion when it comes to the sports gambling that may potentially happen here in the state of Kansas now that the Supreme Court repealed that Protection Act here federally, and we get to make those choices statewide, but also what it could do in the state-by-state decisions that may come out of that. Plus, our next guest in studio, he's a candidate for the 2nd Congressional District on the Republican side, Mr. Steve Watkins. We'll chat with him in studio for a while, get your thoughts and calls as well. Hour number 3 right around the corner for The Voice of Reason here on KQAM. Stay right here.
It's time for Reason.
5 states last night had their primaries, and the blue wave is not happening. The excitement, the activism, and right now the Republicans would have been able to maintain every single one of their seats in the 5 states, whether it was a House seat, whether it was a Senate seat, or whether it was the governorship or anything else locally that may have happened in those states. Republicans would have maintained every single one of them. Where's the blue wave, baby? Where is it? We're not seeing it.
This is The Voice of Reason with Andy Hoosier.
Then I get on my knees and pray. We don't get fooled again. Don't get fooled again.
That's what I'm talking about. Welcome into The Voice of Reason, hour number 3, broadcasting live out of the heart of the nation here in Wichita, Kansas on the Big Talker, 1480 on the AM side, 102.5 on the FM side, KQAM. Simulcasting on TV on KGPT TV, channel 2610. What's up? Welcome in. It is a Tuesday, hashtag Patriotic Tuesday, the way that we roll every single week. 316-721-8255, 316-721-TALK. If you want to join into the program, I'd love to hear from you today. We are on Facebook Live, facebook.com/1480 KQAM. You can like it, share it, leave a comment, ask a question, whatever you want to do. We'd greatly appreciate that. Let's shift gears a little bit. We've had some great discussions. We have some more topics we'll get to in just a bit. But for the next half hour, I want to talk to a great individual. He's in studio with us as he is campaigning for the 2nd Congressional District as Lynn Jenkins is retiring, stepping aside. And I tell you what, there are a plethora of great candidates up there, and got to meet a few of them up at the Kansas State Rifle Association's annual meeting just a few weeks ago. And one of them in studio with us now, Mr. Steve Watkins in studio. Steve, how are you, my friend?
I'm great, Andy. Thank you so much for having me, and hello to all your listeners out there. I'm really excited to be here. You're a friend. Met you at the Rifle Association meeting, and I've been looking forward to this for a long time.
Well, I appreciate you coming in here. It's great to have you in the Wichita area, a little bit outside of the district, but this is an area that I think really has a lot of influence all over the state, including that area. So it's really great to see you down here. Appreciate you swinging down this way.
Yeah, and it's also incumbent upon your voters to obviously take notice of what's happening politically throughout the state. Our delegation works in chorus up on Capitol Hill to advocate for all Kansans, and I'd like to be a part of that.
Absolutely. Well, first off, being outside of the district a little bit, talk about yourself. A lot of the listeners are very interested in what's happening in the other districts. In the 2nd District, we follow very closely with the big 1st District on the western part of the state. But talk about yourself, your background a little bit, and what led you to this point running for Congress in the state of Kansas.
Sure, Andy. Well, once upon a time, 6 generations ago, my ancestors pushed west in horse-drawn carriages and homesteaded here in Kansas. And over the years, we've been farmers and ranchers and cowboys, teachers. I'm an engineer. I'm a military officer, a businessman, a dog sled racer, as a matter of fact, a newlywed, family man, patriot, Christian. So I'm not a politician. I'm not a lawyer. And of course, none of this is about me. But what voters are interested in is a political outsider. So what I bring to the race is an option for voters to really hear a new and a fresh voice. I'm interested in returning traditional and conservative Kansas values and military leadership to the politicians on Capitol Hill. Now, this conservative movement rests on values that I learned here in Kansas, mainly from my parents. They taught me the value of hard work and honesty, service and respectfulness, passion, and above all, just respect for each other and honesty, integrity, and trust. And that developed into patriotism and freedom, family, traditional family values, and religious faith, small government, low taxes, free market economy, and the gift of life, the right to protect yourself, and peace through military strength. These are values that I first learned here in Kansas. And as soon as I could, I joined the military just right after high school, Topeka West High School, go Chargers. Mm-hmm. And I went to West Point, was the class of 1999, go Black Knights. And in fact, I was just there last Saturday and for my wedding. Can I send a shout? Is it okay?
Absolutely. Please do.
I just got married last Saturday to the most amazing woman I've ever known, I've ever met. She's brilliant and beautiful and all things I'm not. So I want to say hi to my wife, wife
congratulations
of about
on that.
3 or 4 days.
That's fantastic. Congratulations.
Oh, thank you. So after West Point, I went to airborne school, Ranger school, and then up to Alaska for my first duty station. You see, I've always been an outdoorsman at heart, and just the draw of America's last frontier was strong with me, and so I went up there to serve. And then after 9/11, my world changed as an active duty Army officer, as did our world. Sure. Our world changed, and although I was scheduled to get out of the military, I voluntarily extended so that I could deploy down to Afghanistan and fill a gap down there. And I served in the very violent Khost province. This is in southeastern Afghanistan, and I conducted combat patrols on the Afghan-Pakistan border. And it was 2004, and this was a life-changing experience. It was really one of the best years of my life is to serve in combat and lead men and women, lead incredibly brave men and women. And when I think about this race and this crossroads of my life, I think about them, and I think about sacrifices that they've made to protect our freedom, our culture, and our way of life. And so, that drives me each day. And it's not theatrics. I truly think about them and I feel them in my heart.
I got to say, you mentioned a little bit of those stories when we were at the KSRA meeting up there a few weeks ago, and you talked about some of the experience you had in the military and what you saw over there and all that, and you can definitely tell. I mean, it's impacted you very dramatically, and you hold that with you every day, and that's it is drastic and as dramatic and as sad as it was. I mean, it helps you be able to grow and move forward and really make some tough decisions in life, doesn't it?
It sure does. It sure does. And one thing I'm proud of is that we fought for each other, and we also fought for an idea, that a dream born in 1776 to this imperfect crew of revolutionaries. Now, we kept those values alive in mind and heart when we ran missions. We're fighting for America and our way of life. And so when I think of today, in 2018, this election is about our values. And just like then, we as aspiring political operatives, we need to safeguard our values and protect our culture, defend our country. And I took an oath to do just that against enemies, foreign and domestic. And that oath, up to and including this very moment, is one I'm willing to fight and die for. So I've served proudly and worked in Iraq and Afghanistan in support of that oath, alongside brave men and women, many of whom died for those values. And some died doing what I led them to do, doing what, and one way I think of it, Andy, is something that we asked them to do. And my campaign slogan is that Kansans can do anything, and that reminds me of kind of how we felt over there. As Americans we have the ability, the capabilities to protect our freedom and to spread it into some of the toughest and most austere countries in the world.
Your slogan, as you mentioned, Kansans can do anything, and you are not only a military individual, so we thank you so much for your service and what you have done, but outside of the military as well, you're kind of an adventurer. And when you talk about how Kansans can do anything, I don't know if I've met another person that's been so adventure-y, I guess I can put it, when it comes to, I mean, you said you dog sled, you did the Iditarod in Alaska. Not only that, but you've climbed Mount Everest as well. You've done some fascinating things that very, very few people do, one or the other, let alone doing both of these.
Yes, well, thank you. Dog sled racing is the crossroads of so many things I enjoy. And I don't do it as much as I'd like, but you're absolutely right. It's been a part of my life over the last 15 years or so. It's an intersection of the great outdoors, dogs, man's best friend, classic historical challenge, and a race. And so what happened is, let's see, this was maybe my first time on a dog sled was maybe 2001. And then I've raced a little here and there over the years, but after an injury in I think some 2014 or so, 2013, I set out to race in the Iditarod. I came back from the Middle East. I was injured and then medevac to Dubai and then to the U.S. for emergency surgery. And in the process, it was one of those stories where I think I told the nurse, "Hey, I'm going to race in the Iditarod someday," and she said, "Oh, that's not going to happen."
Cute.
That's cute. Here, we're going to give you more meds here. I said, no.
Here's some more
here's some more
morphine
drip. Here's morphine
yeah.
drip here. I said, no. I'm going to race in the Iditarod. She says, "Oh, okay, that's nice." And what I did, and I reached out to some associates of mine. I said, I'd like to take my mushing to the next level. And I bought a truck, drove it up. Was when I was good enough, well enough to walk. And I found myself in a dog sled with a big, powerful, real A-list team. And I remember I was thrown into the snow, and pain was just screaming through my body. And I thought, "Oh, what am I doing? This is. I'm not sure I can do this." And then and I was just driven. In part, I drive a lot of my strength through my friends and patriots lost in war, and who would power me now. And what I think about, and it's just a quick side note to that, I led a lot of these men and women in combat, but in my life, I feel like they lead me. And so in times trial or peril, I turn to them and I ask them what to do. And I know that the advice that they give me is some of the advice that I empowered them, and that is, you have to go where it's hard in order to accomplish what's worthwhile. And so I got back on the sled and raced in several more races, culminating in the Iditarod. And then what actually was an attempt at becoming the first person in history, to the best of my knowledge, I'm pretty sure of it, but to race in the Iditarod and then climb Mount Everest in the same year.
In the same year?
Yeah, in the same year.
Wow.
And only a handful of people have done both. I think maybe, I don't know, to date it was maybe 2 or 3. I think a few more have done it since then. But the Iditarod went well, and I'm proudly wear my Iditarod belt buckle. And but unfortunately, Everest didn't go so well. So, yeah, obviously it was about, 45 days into the expedition when at 19,000 feet up the mountain, the ground started to shake. And I was with a climbing partner named Villa, and we're kind of brothers and sisters. I call her sis. She calls me bro. And she says, avalanche. I look up, and this ground is really shaking. And we look up, and coming down from Mount Everest, truly, literally, the top of the world, was this enormous avalanche. And this thing, oh man, this thing looked like a tidal wave. It was coming down, bearing down at us, and the ground was really, really shaking. You could hear it. You can hear an avalanche. And I've been in avalanches before, and this thing was the biggest I'd ever seen by far. And as it comes down, my initial reaction was uncontrolled. It was uncontrolled flashback, and I felt my AK in my hand, my Kalashnikov, and I said, I started instinctively looking around for defilade, something to hide behind, and said, I gotta shoot our way out of this. I gotta get Villa, and I gotta shoot our way out of this. And avalanche kept coming, and just in a split second, I realized that was just a momentary flashback, and that I wasn't in an ambush, but that I was in an avalanche, and it got closer and closer, and then I dropped to. I said, Villa, we're not going to make it out of this one. She goes, no, brother, I don't think that we are. And I said,
so it's coming directly towards you guys.
Directly towards us, yeah. Again, we were about 19,000 feet, and it was coming directly towards us. And I said, I thought of all my friends who've passed away in war, and my class and my soldiers, my kind of year group in the military, most fought in 2 wars. So I got a lot of dead friends, and so I said to them in my heart, I say, I'm coming now. I'm going to see you soon. I'm going to see you today. And so I turned to Villa and then I said, I love you very much, sis. And she goes, I love you too, bro. And she goes, why are you laughing? I said, I was chuckling. I said, I always thought I was going to die in the sand, and I'm going to die in the snow. And on such a beautiful day, and it was such a great climbing companion and a lifelong friend. And that's when she said, I love you, bro. I said, I love you too, sis. And I dropped to my knees, and the avalanche hit, the forward blast of it, the snow blast, ice blast of it hit. The body of it in its full strength didn't hit. We were jostled about, knocked back, knocked down, knocked around a little bit, but not enough to kill us. It didn't have, at that point, the momentum and the strength and the violence to kill us. But unfortunately, the same can't be said of 22 people on the mountain who lost their lives.
Wow.
And 6 of the 22 were from my team, and one in particular was very, very close, close personal friend and climbing partner of mine. And so after we kind of dug our way out, our group leader, Gov Colyer, who's kind of a famous climber and was associated with the disaster, and I believe it was 91, made famous by Into Thin Air. Gov Colyer was in the mix there, and he was my climbing leader there. He consolidated all the team, and he went to give a little, speech, where we are, where we need to go type moment, and he froze up. And I'd seen that freeze before. I mean, just didn't quite know what to say, didn't quite know what to start. And so what I did was interject what I knew needed to be, because I had seen, to that point I'd maybe been in combat maybe 7 or 8 years. And so I said, I did what I knew needed to be done, which is introduce this element of gratitude. And I said, guys, we are so lucky. And everybody sighed deep and said, we're very lucky. Now we're not out of the briar patch just yet, but we're still alive. We still have our gear. We still have a good deal of water, plenty of food, and so we're going to make it out of there. And that we did, thanks to the heroism and leadership of those climbers and Guy and Villa and so many people that I look up to.
Wow. What a story. What a story. Steve Watkins, running for 2nd Congressional District on the Republican side, candidate steveforkansas.com. Let's take a break, 23 minutes past the hour. When we come back, I want to shift gears a little bit to some of the issues. And if you get this seat, kind of the same battle when it comes to not fighting the nature or an enemy with a gun, but with someone with that piece of legislation, what they can do potentially in that battle. So I want to shift gears a little bit to that side of it. If you have a question, you can call in as well, 316-721-8255. 23 minutes past the hour. This is the Voice of Reason. Stay here.
This is the Voice of Reason with Andy Hoosier on the Big Talker, KQAM.
Welcome back in, 28 minutes past the hour on a Tuesday. Great to have you along here on the Big Talker, KQAM, KGPT TV. Welcome in, 316-721-8255, 316-72 on Talk. We'll have some more time here with Steve Watkins, steveforkansas.com, steveforkansas.com. If you want to look more up about him, about the issues, we'll talk about some of those issues coming up after the bottom of the hour here in just a minute. I do want to remind you, though, we already got our registration done for today for the Indianapolis 500, our ticket giveaway. That'll be done on Monday. We're going to register one person each day. We got ours today, but we will be doing another one tomorrow. Stay tuned in for that. 3 more chances, baby. You got 3 more takes. That race coming up on Memorial Weekend Sunday, May 27th, in our ticket giveaway here on KQAM. Brought to you by Autotech of Wichita, AutoTechWichita.com, along with 6 Gourmet Meats, Facebook.com. Just search for 6 Gourmet Butcher Shop. So that's coming up tomorrow. But you can still do this one today. I do want to remind you, we haven't gotten very many yet. I'm going to be submitting some, possibly even some drinks. But it's the KQAM KGSO first annual KQAM KGSO cookbook. And it is getting to be that time. Barbecue season right around the corner, baby. It's here. Enjoy it. And if you have one of those recipes that you would like to submit to be able to share to your entire KQAM family, whether it is dinners, desserts, breakfast, drinks, barbecue, it doesn't matter. Check it out. All you got to do is submit it. Email it to recipe@kqamradio.com. Recipe@kqamradio.com. If you got a great recipe, we'll put it in there. Here's the kicker. If you submit your recipe, you get your name into a drawing to win a brand new pellet grill hat tip to Wichita Tractor. They're going to be providing one for you. It's brand new. It's a pellet. I've never used a pellet grill before, but I've heard that they're amazing. You can use the different flavors. You can actually put in the different types of pellets to get different tastes to them. So you want to check it out. Email your recipe@kqamradio.com. Any type of recipe that you want to. And then you get your name into the drawing for the brand new pellet grill hat tip to Wichita Tractor. For that one, visit them, wichitatractor.com. Bottom of the hour news coming up. Lots more to get to when we come back. We'll talk about some of the issues, legislation, and vision that Steve Watkins has for the 2nd Congressional District during this primary and going into the midterm elections 2018. Lots more coming up here on The Voice of Reason. Stay tuned.
Listening to the Voice of Reason with Andy Hoosier, your personal political therapist. Give him a call at 721-TALK.
Welcome back into the Voice of Reason, wrapping up the show today. It is 35 minutes past the hour. I cannot believe how fast this show goes along. 316-721-8255, 316-721-TALK. One more segment, chatting with Republican candidate for the primary for the 2nd Congressional District up on the north end of the state, Mr. Steve Watkins in studio. And we've learned a little bit about you and your background. And first off, I mean, you've gone through so much. And I appreciate what you've done, not only in the military, but then, I like to call you the adventurer in that sense, which I think is really important because you do face a lot of things head on. And you're not afraid to do so. And it kind of shows with the different things that you've done. Politics now and going into the government is one of those things where a lot of people are intimidated to face it and sometimes don't know how to face it properly. And as we see that right now with the crazy political landscape where a lot of people who used to be the experts to know exactly what's going to happen, right now, we're kind of living in the wild card era when it comes to elections, as Donald Trump was never expected to win the presidency. Right now, the outsider movement is very popular in many elections, to where many people who are saying, you know what, I'm not a politician. I'm going to go in and I'm going to do the things I say I'm going to do because I'm not held to my previous political track record or whatever the case may be. We see the blue wave movement that's trying to push right now, where the blue wave supposedly is going to wipe out Republicans across the board in this midterm election, and they're just going to start stopping Donald Trump. And not only that, but begin the impeachment process, which again is another absurd mentality. So with all of this going on, the primary election, I've said this many times before, every time we talk about elections, midterm or primary elections are the number one most important election that you can have. I'm the big advocate of the party trumps person in the general election, but the way you set the tone for the Republican Party or for any party is who you actually nominate in the primaries. So, Steve, the question I have for you is, going into the primaries, what is the landscape for the 2nd Congressional District? What is the vision, and how do we move forward going into the seat later on?
And that is a fantastic question. And what voters need to think about is what you said. Think about electability. Now, when I think of the Kansas 2nd, I think a lot about the Pennsylvania 18th. Now, Pennsylvania 18th looks a lot like Kansas 2nd in terms of its demographics. I mean, there was an R+12, I think, up there. Trump won by somewhere around 20 points. I mean, it looks a lot like Kansas 2nd, a lot like Kansas at large. Now then think about the Pennsylvania 18th candidates. In the general, you had Rick Ciccone, a little older, experienced state legislator, ardent Trump supporter, which I am too, but you also had a younger, sharp kid named Connor Lamb, is political outsider, a veteran, described as a local guy with a lot of energy as a Democrat. Now, I'm not Democrat, and I don't have a bone in my body as Democrat. That's liberal. I don't. But think about the moderates. Now, Kansas need to think about how the moderates are going to respond to those options. Now, did they go with the older state legislator? No, they didn't. I mean, they went with a young political outsider, veteran, who was described as being energetic, personable, smart, and having a lot of enthusiasm. That's who won. And so, as voters go to the polls for the primary, keep in mind the candidate who can bring home the victory, and that is so very important. I'd also point out in that race that Republicans outspent Democrats by some $8 million, I believe, twice as much as the Democrats. And they had Republican stars, including Donald Trump and Trump Jr. and Ivanka and Mike Pence, all come into the state to campaign with Ciccone. It wasn't good enough. The persuadables favored Connor Lamb, and so think long and hard. And when you hear state legislator experience, I mean, think about our Republican loss in Pennsylvania, and so you can also think about what happened in West Virginia. And I'm pleased to see that Republicans are keeping in mind electability when they go to their primaries. They need to. We need to stop that blue wave, and we are going to stop it if voters think smart and really understand who they're voting for. Now, this is not a year for controversy. This is a year to stay critically focused on the issues. A candidate who has the energy to fight around the clock leading up to the general election and in Washington. And we need a candidate who can connect with the next generation of conservatives and has the wisdom to avoid partisan stunts and negativity. And so as you know, Anne, I mean, you are such a champion, you're such a warrior in this fight, and it's such an important year. I mean, we're worried about. I just came from the East Coast where I studied, got a master's out there, took a little break from conflict environments and used that academic experience as a pivot into politics. And you know these New England liberal elites, so-called liberal elites, especially in academia. I mean, these people they believe in socialism, elitism, identity politics. And perhaps the cornerstone to their damaging liberal political view is this idea that they believe in equal outcomes, and not just equal opportunities, but equal outcomes. And that requires a government that's so large and so intrusive that our true American values of individual freedom and independence are just crushed. And of course, they believe that the role of government is to rectify any and all injustices in the universe, and that to do so they need to take away your possessions and subject you to servitude. And the left also, and I debated them till I was blue in the face. And I think at the program I was in at Harvard, that was maybe 12% Republican, and of them, maybe 3% actually engaged in debate.
It almost feels like banging your head against the wall sometimes, right?
Oh, man. I tell you what, brother, that's exactly true. And the left, they need this identity politics and intersectionality to survive. I mean, talk about banging your head against the wall. I mean, in their worldview, perspective doesn't matter as much as identity. And if you're a member of a group that's been historically more victimized, then your opinion matters more. And what's more, if someone on a lower on the victimization hierarchy says something you don't like, well, that's an act of violence. And they wield this social agenda like a club, and their battle cry is that we deplorables like you and I and these great listeners, we deplorable Republicans are racist and sexist and bigots, homophobes who hate the poor. Well, I'm not buying that. You know, we live in the greatest, freest, most prosperous and generous country in the world. And like you, Andy, we're just trying to keep it that way.
Absolutely. Let's talk about a couple of the issues. We got a few minutes left, and I, for the listeners that want to know, because they love those issues, and like you, I mean, they're hard pressed on those issues. I mean, obviously, coming from the military and you supporting the KSRA and even sponsoring a lot of that. I mean, obviously, you defend the Second Amendment to its extreme, and we appreciate that very much, and we love that. When it comes to the economy, when it comes to working with Trump, which always seems the big issue, are we going to allow Trump be Trump and help advance his agenda? When it comes to some of the health care and repealing Obamacare or maintaining, how do we go about fighting some of that? What would you do in D.C.?
I like Trump's progress that he's made on so many fronts, and I call balls and strikes on Donald Trump. And I love the simplified tax code. I love low taxes. I'm a low tax thinker. I love the deregulation that I've seen. I love the judicial appointments that I've seen. I love the patriotism. I'm an international affairs type thinker. I've worked outside of the U.S. For 8 years, mainly in war zones, and so and I think a lot about international affairs and national security. And so the progress I've seen him make in North Korea, I am just overjoyed. I'm relieved, frankly. And so there's so much good that's happening here, and I would completely support the agenda that he ran on. I'm a huge supporter of his efforts to combat illegal immigration. We got to build the wall. We got to take accountability of who's in our country. I think that was
the phrase many people wanted to hear was "build that wall."
Build that wall, man. Hey, listen, I'm a combat engineer. All right, the wall just makes sense. Now I've built, designed, and helped to defend walls in war. And they're not even a controversial tool that warfighters have. It doesn't even kill people, all right? But, the partisan left like seeing it and making it a political tool. You can't have the wall. What the heck? Protecting our border and identifying who's in our country, it's not mean-spirited. It's common sense. And I think voters are ready for common sense solutions. As an engineer, I look to the built environment for solutions on how we can solve our problems on the border, in schools, in our in the world that we live in. And so the wall, it just makes complete sense. I'd like to add that I'm unequivocally pro-life, and I just every chance I get, I try and take a moment and think about all the lives we lost in the 45 years since Roe v. Wade, and the tragedies that have resulted in some 1.1 million deaths of unborn children each year, and that disproportionately affects Black and Hispanic women. And we just need to fight the good fight on that front. When I think about the First Amendment, I carried a gun for most of my adult life, and I just, my goodness, to think we're going to hand off our security to a government that at times is so inept. That's not any more true than we see it in Parkland, where the government had every opportunity to save us. We can't rely on this. I believe that the U.S. Constitution gave us the right to bear arms, and I believe God gave us a right to protect ourselves.
I love it. Steve Watkins, steveforkansas.com is the website, steveforkansas.com. Final words for you to people that are listening in this area especially. We have a lot of listeners up in the 2nd Congressional District listening online, Facebook, and that sort of thing. But for the listeners here in the Wichita area that may not be able to vote but want to get more information on you, maybe help you out, that sort of thing, how can they do so and what can they do?
Well, I want you to feel welcome to reach out to me no matter where you live. We're all in this together. We're all out to propagate the conservative movement, and I want to represent all Kansas in the delegation. And so I love you, love your listeners. You're a fellow champion. Come to steveforkansas.com and let me support you.
Absolutely. Well, congratulations on the marriage that happened last weekend. That's fantastic. That's a great move. And good luck to you on the campaign trail. We'll get you back on the show before the primaries. And if you do end up getting the nomination, getting in the seat, we'd love to be able to reach out and talk to you on a semi-frequent basis, see what's happening in D.C.
You know it, brother. Absolutely.
I love it. Steve Watkins right there, steveforkansas.com. Let's take a break, wrap up the show today. Get your thoughts and calls when we come back. This is The Voice of Reason. Stay here.
This is The Voice of Reason with Andy Hoosier on the Big Talker KQAM.
Hey, welcome back into The Voice of Reason, wrapping up the program today. Thanks again to Steve Watkins, swinging in studio for a little bit. Held him a little bit longer than we had anticipated, but great conversation. Appreciate him talking about what he's done and some of the issues that he would fight for. Again, steveforkansas.com. If you want to chat with him, we'll be talking with all of the candidates as much, or at least as many as we can. Here on the show, we'll talk to as many of them on their backstories, on their records, on their legislation, on their vision, on their ideas. We'll talk with them coming up for that. I know it's not necessarily within our Wichita district, but you need to know. You need to know exactly what's going to happen all around the entire state of Kansas. We've talked to the 1st district, the big first out in the big red one out on the western part of the state, obviously here in the Wichita area and the other districts. So we'll talk with all those candidates coming up. I believe Steve Fitzgerald actually will be on the show here in a couple of days as well, so we can follow up. But we need to know, as I mentioned, the primary election is the number one most important election that we could possibly have. We set the tone. We decide what the party's going to represent. We decide what direction the party's going to go, and that's how we do it. You don't have to be a super active, engaged member of the Republican Party. It's nice to do so, and that really helps the party and us being able to change it from within, because how many people have decided that they're frustrated with the Republican Party? They're frustrated with the Democratic Party. They've gone independent. They've gone libertarian. They try these third-party movements all the time, not enough to really make a substantial difference in the elections, just enough to sometimes turn over the election on its head because there may be a Republican and Democrat that get, a 3-4 percent margin, and the independent took 5%. And they could have changed it drastically from what it potentially could have been. So we need to fix the party within. And you can either do that by being an active member within the party and trying to change it, but a lot of people don't have time to do that. So what do? You elect the candidates within the Republican Party that actually have your values and that fight for what you want them to fight for. 316-721-8255. So thanks again to Steve Watkins coming in the studio. We'll get Scott Fitzgerald on the show here soon. We also have a few other candidates that we'll be having join us here relatively soon. So really looking forward to all of them coming on the show, talking about the 2nd Congressional District and what may happen. That's a huge district. And you got to remember, too, kind of the big landscape that district actually has, with a very conservative sect of it, with a very progressive sect of it, and someone that can actually be able to win on one side or the other within that district, because it's a very difficult district to run in. And there are some really great candidates, and I'm really honestly glad that I'm not in that district to have to make that choice. So thanks again for coming in. We'll chat with more of them coming up soon. We got a few minutes before the end of the show. Let's take a phone call, shall we? 316-721-8255. Good morning. What's your name?
Hi, Andy. This is Helen.
Helen, how are you?
I'm doing just great.
Good.
That issue that was brought up, it seems like it was brought up, a few weeks ago, about our judicial system wanting to, personally twist the interpretation of the Constitution.
Sure.
Regarding to life, liberty, and property.
Absolutely.
You know,
Judicial activism. You're right.
Exactly. Well, and then hear this candidate that you just talked to.
Mm-hmm.
You know, he's pro-life, and so apparently he gets it. He understands what the word and the terminology of what life is, and
well, those are the qualities we have to look for. I mean, in any of our candidates, local all the way up to federal elections, we have to understand what the role of the legislature is, what the role of the separation of powers are when it comes to the three branches of government, and the values that you and I hold dear. And if we do respect the right to life, as you mentioned, with fighting the abortion argument, with trying to defend life no matter where it may come from or however it may be. We defend that life. Not only is it a God-given right that we protected by the Constitution, but if we are even going to discuss it, which we shouldn't in the first place, but even if we are, it's got to be done in the legislature, not in the Supreme Court, because the courts should have nothing to do with that type of issue.
Absolutely. The Constitution does not give the authority to make laws or change laws to the judicial system. That's only with the legislature,
exactly.
The lawmakers. And so, and then they want to twist the interpretation of liberty as meaning, well, okay, we have liberty, but that means that you have the liberty to murder your baby or murder a baby. Well, no. Okay, so if you have liberty to murder another person, so what difference does it make if you're a baby or an adult?
That's right. I mean, we have laws that say you're not allowed to do that. Now, the progressives always talk about choice and that we need to have the choice to make our own decisions. But if you actually look at the way, a baby's made, I'm pretty sure everybody knows how that happens. And you already made that choice way back when. So, Helen, I appreciate it very much. I mean, you bring up a great point. I mean, when it violates, you have the rights. You have rights to choose. You have the rights to make your own personal decisions with your personal responsibility and with the consequences that come, either positive or negative, based on decisions that you make in life. And we need to remember those types of consequences and actually the cause and effect system that used to be common sense. But that's why we have shows like this now, because apparently people don't remember what common sense is all about. And you have the rights to make the choices that you want to until it infringes upon the liberties that are granted and protected by the Constitution. That's a wrap for today. We appreciate everybody hanging out with us as always today. This is your show. It's time to speak up, speak out, speak loud, speak proud, speak the truth, and always speak some reason. This is The Voice of Reason. Have a great Tuesday, everybody.